Bernie Sanders is one of 10 Democratic presidential candidates ready to take the debate stage tonight. The Vermont senator is heading into this debate as a top contender, according to recent polling. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns caught up with Sanders' campaign manager, Faiz Shakir, in Detroit ahead of tonight's event.
Second presidential debate, primary debate. What does Bernie Sanders need to do tonight? What's your goal?
So one is that lean into the fact that sometimes he can be repetitious, and the fact that he's got a record of consistency. He's been fighting these issues for the better part of a lifetime, while other candidates evolve and morph and backtrack from various proposals and plans because the temperature gets a little too hot in the kitchen. They walk away. He doesn't, and he's been a model of steadiness on these issues. And if you want a candidate who you can trust when they're in the White House to do what they say they're going to do, it's Bernie Sanders, and I think we want to lean into that.
He's going to be on stage next to Elizabeth Warren. They're kind of the marquee of tonight's debate.
Yes.
Can we expect the senator to go after Elizabeth Warren on policy, on rhetoric, on anything?
Unlikely. They've been friends for a very long time. They see a lot of these issues similarly. Particularly when you think about the other candidates on the stage, the issues that they're fighting for, honestly, their contrasts are with other people. The bigger contrasts, the more important issues, they have been allies on. And so there are going to be 5 or 6 more of these debates. I think at some point the debate stage will narrow, and then we can start to have differences between a select number of candidates. But for now, the bigger fights are between them two together, fighting a corrupt political and economic system. And I think they'll probably be bouncing off one another is my bet.
Anybody who won't be on the stage tonight, who will be maybe in the senator's head, anybody that he might mention?
Yes. It may come up. Obviously, he's not looking to go out and attack, but I believe you've seen Joe Biden issue a health care plan. You've seen Kamala Harris issue a health care plan, which are good things from our perspective. This is the debate we want to be having. Voters should have a choice. So he wants to have a policy conversation around this. Let's talk about their details. Their plans do nothing to end corporate greed in our system, do nothing to address the fact that there's 34 million who don't have insurance, 30-something more million who are underinsured. Let's have a debate about that. That's the conversation he has teed up. And so I imagine there will be questions around Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. He's ready to talk about that.
On Kamala Harris's plan, since she introduced it this week, she does have support for Medicare for all, but it's a longer phase-in period. She also has room for private insurers within the Medicare system. Is that feasible in your view?
It's not only not feasible, it is the wrong approach. It says that we'll just perpetuate the status quo. We'll continue to allow insurers with their corporate greed into the traditional Medicare system and deny you health care when you need it most, jack up the costs. Why do you think CEOs of health insurance companies and pharma companies are making tens of millions of dollars? Do you think they're charities out of the goodness of their heart? They're going to come into Medicare and start offering nice health care to everybody? You have to address the fundamental problem in the system, and Kamala Harris's plan does nothing about that. In fact, she brings more insurers into Medicare. It is a flawed approach, and we welcome this debate, this contrast.
Because this has been a focal point of the campaign, Medicare for All, this is something that Bernie Sanders has been talking about for a long time. It's now kind of mainstream in the party now. But there is some concern that some Democrats have raised about what this would do to the current system. You mentioned Joe Biden. He argues that this would undo Obamacare as we know it. What's your view?
Well, I think it's misinformation, and Joe Biden knows that. You're not undoing Obamacare if all you're taking is an existing program, Medicare, that exists for people 65 and older, and all you do is say, okay, if you're 55 and older, you can now join it. If you're 45 and older, you can now join it. How's that undoing and unraveling Obamacare? He even said to people, you heard Joe Biden say, oh, if you have cancer, you might be left twisting in the wind because you might not have care under Bernie Sanders. That's outrageous. It's ridiculous. There's no way, no possibility that Bernie Sanders' system is going to leave anyone out in the cold. In fact, the system covers everybody. It's Medicare for all. Everyone will have insurance. Everyone will have the ability to go to any doctor of their pleasing.
I want to ask you about Michigan.
Yes.
Bernie Sanders won the Michigan primary
Yes.
last time around. Democrats are really focused on this state because Trump won it, but only by fewer than 11,000 votes or so. So very close. What would you say Democrats need to do to compete in a state like Michigan?
So Michigan, one of the reasons that Bernie Sanders won it last time is he speaks to the working class of America, and they have been decimated. They understand you got 45 million people with an anchor of student debt around their necks. You've got millions of people uninsured, underinsured. You've got people who can't get a decent wage and need at least $15 an hour to survive. And these are the causes that they know not only does Bernie Sanders have the right policy on, but it comes from a place of conviction. It is truly what mobilizes him, what galvanizes him to run for president in the first place. And that is the reason he carried Michigan last time. In our view, we want to desperately win Michigan again in the primary, which is on March 10th. And in order to carry Michigan in the primary, we want to make the argument that you got to carry Michigan in the general. There's no way you defeat Donald Trump without carrying Michigan. Let's be clear about it. And we're glad and happy to see that in all head-to-head battles and polls that we've seen so far, Bernie Sanders beats Donald Trump, not only in this state, but nationally.
Do you think that Sanders or other Democrats are able to actually win back Trump voters, or do you think the focus needs to be on really ramping up the base in places like Detroit and elsewhere, ramping up in more diverse areas where younger voters may be? Is that kind of the roadmap?
So a little bit of both. I think the short answer that I would say on this is you can't defeat Donald Trump unless you bring people in. New voters in. So it might be younger voters who are voting for the first time. It may be people who checked out of the political process and haven't voted in the past 2, 4, 6, 8 years. They might be people who might have voted for Donald Trump and are who now sense that he betrayed them, that he actually wasn't sincere about fighting for the working class. And all of those have to build a coalition of bringing new voters in, because if you go to the electorate again in 2020 with the same approach of gradualism and incrementalism and status quo politics as you did in 2016, we're likely to see a similar result. He is strong, and I think we're deluding ourselves as Democrats to think that it's going to be easy to defeat him. He's going to have a lot of money, he's going to have a lot of base, those people are energized about his agenda, and you don't defeat him if you don't mobilize and excite people.